Cannabis Media and PCM TV programming is supported by Revolutionary Clinics in Massachusetts, the #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 accounting solution for the cannabis industry. And by TCP's Style Lighting Grow Kit, all you need to grow. Well, here we are. Thank God it's another Friday edition of Green Rush Live on Pro Cannabis Media. Hi, everybody. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of Green Rush Live this week when we celebrate Women in History Month. Yes, I'm sure you've heard by now that March is Women in History Month. We at Pro Cannabis Media decided we would extend that a little bit and add the word cannabis into it. Duh, it certainly makes sense. Women in cannabis history. And the first person that I thought of who would be a great guest host during this show was a toss-up, to be honest, between both people who are on this show right now. We've got Jamie Pearson, the CEO of Bhang Nation. Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
And thank you so much for joining us. And also, speaking of legends, Mara Gordon from California. Hello, Mara.
Hi there, Jimmy.
Thank you, both of you, for joining us here today. And it is a celebration of women in cannabis history. And my dear friend and a regular on our show, Kurt Dalton, had written a beautiful newsletter about why he thinks the future of cannabis is females. Jamie, is the future of cannabis in females, or is it already here?
It's a good question. I would say cannabis is a female plant. The future of cannabis should be female. I've long stated that I think women should have a seat at the table. And so I think I'm going to have to answer in the affirmative.
Yeah, there you go. And Mara, what's your immediate reaction to that comment? Is the future of the cannabis industry female?
Well, there's a difference between what is reality and what it should be, in my opinion. In my opinion, it should be, because women tend to be the healers and the nurturers and families, and understand they've been making medicines for millennia. The reality of it seems to be quite different, though, unfortunately. And I also feel like there's a little tiny bit of like, let's give a lot of attention to the women while we're back on the other side exploiting and doing everything else. So I would take one step further, Jamie. We don't need to have a seat at the table. It's our table. And we need to start deciding who we're going to let in, because right now they've corrupted it.
Yeah, they being the other gender. Is that the idea, Mara?
Well, I'm not binary from that. Okay. I don't believe, yeah, but I would say that it's not just men. It's women that are taking on the whole way of male energy and not keeping going. I mean, I don't want to start getting all esoteric, because that's not my nature. But I think that in general, some of the women players are interchangeable with male players, because they're not pulling other women along. They're not necessarily collaborative. They're not doing things, that I would like to see more women. Some are, and I think it's up to us to encourage more of that.
Sounds like more of a character thing than a gender thing.
I agree.
Yeah. So, and by the way, I know Jamie knows this about me. I apologize for my gender and my race pretty regularly on this show, because I really think the old white guy has screwed up this country, but good, over a couple of 100 years. Okay. I really believe that. There's more and more evidence of that every day. And Jamie is someone who is a CEO of a major #1 edible company in North America. Are there some things that you have learned from your male counterparts, or by their mistakes have you learned more?
Well, this is it's an interesting topic all the way around. And I'll say this: my undergraduate degree is in women's studies, so I probably have learned, on a formal level more than the average person on the topic of gender studies. But I will say this whole, you know, men bashing or, you know, lifting women up. I just really feel like, I don't really want to participate in that so much, or have a we they experience, because there are women that I absolutely admire and love working with and learn from, and there are men that I absolutely admire and love working with and learn from. Um, uh, uh, and I wondered, you know, your comment about, is it a character thing? Um, I don't know if even if it's a character thing. I think some of it's just um, the overt and the covert gender discrimination and racial discrimination. I think what's happened in the last administration has been essentially that, you know, the concept of, well, he says what he thinks, and he says what everybody's thinking. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, we got to go back to the time where when you had those awful thoughts, it was not okay to say them, and now it's okay to say things that are not okay. And we're starting to backslide a little bit in some of the progress we've made, and progress being things I think about when just the concept of make America great again. And I'm not trying to go there either, but when I think about that, and I've been thinking about that a lot for the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years, you know, what was that made America great that they're referring to? Because I think about, you know, a lot of people don't realize women did not have the right to have their own bank account or to own property, or, you know, we've come a long way. And then I think about the hearings for the Supreme Court right now that are so shocking. They're so shocking in how absurd they are. And so I do feel like we've slid back, where a woman who is so incredibly qualified and so articulate and so educated and has such a pristine record and is above reproach is getting confronted with children's books and asked these asinine questions. And I do feel like it takes us twice as much work and to go half as far. But I also know that people get tired of the conversation, and then you almost lose some credibility when you're known as the face of feminist business. And I'll tell you this, I've been a feminist my whole life, and I believe the definition of feminism is just the fact that women are people. I believe women are people, and I believe that we lead, we buy, we sell, we make hiring decisions, firing decisions, we manage cash. We're doing everything that our male counterparts are doing. And in many circumstances, we can take COVID as a great example, and we can take the women-led countries that really had the best COVID records. Women are great leaders because we tend to be empathetic, and we don't have to be the smartest person in the room, and we don't have to be dogmatic, my way or the highway. Women do have a more collaborative approach. But anytime you're making a broad sweeping generalization about a race or a gender, you're going to run into trouble. And what I would say is that I'm glad that we celebrate women, and I also hate it, because I don't want to be a woman leader. I just want to be recognized as being a leader. But I also really appreciate people understanding that I sit in rooms often where I'm the only woman in the room. Oh, and I'm talked over and patted on the head, you know, figuratively, and discounted and mansplained. And that shit it does happen. It happens on the daily. And so, yeah, it is hard to be a woman leader. And I do appreciate the recognition, and I appreciate the opportunity to lift other women up. But I would really like us to get to a place where that it isn't a thing anymore.
You know, I want to comment on that, if I may, Jimmy, because I could not agree more so. The only thing that I would say, though, is that there are stereotypes. There's always going to be exceptions, but stereotypes happen because there is also often history to prove out some of it. And like, I don't sit on women's panels because I feel like it's like, let's leave all the serious business to the men, and then we'll throw a women's panel together and say, oh yeah, we honored the women. You know what? Stop honoring me. Just listen to me. So, for example, I spoke at a conference the 1st of March. first day of Women History Month. And it was 18 speakers, and I was the only female speaker on the schedule. And I mentioned this to, obviously I had posted it and it went viral and all that crap, but I mentioned it at the reception the night before. And one of the scientists that was speaking, who, I mean, he's a quasi-scientist, but he's one of the scientists the night before said, well, maybe more women need to get involved in science and stuff. And I almost and wring his neck. You know, I've been in STEM for, 30, 40 years now, and whether in technology or in this or whatever. And I think that women have a way of thinking that we have to somehow be overqualified to be able to be legitimate in a way where maybe historically males could, wing it more to get there and figure it out as they go. But I think that in cannabis in particular, I want to see more of the opportunities being laid out for legacy. And those legacy tend to be more of the females. It's just the reality. When I got into this business, all the medicine makers were pretty much women. The men were more the growers and the women were the ones making medicine. So that's just gotten lost. And as a result, I think that, with exceptions like Bhang, we have this like real homogenization of and mediocrity around what's available now in the cannabis industry. I mean, we just have to look at this latest merger. It's like too mediocre making, put them together, they just make it more mediocre.
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah. I was hanging around with the Cresco Lab group last night, so I can totally understand the fervor about MSOs. But I want to go back to something you said, Jamie, because I so appreciate that you verbalize that. The we, they, us, them, black, white, Jew, Gentile, black, white. I already said that. We are all one family of humanity. And at some point, you have to embrace the differences amongst us, even though there are plenty of things in the human element that are frail, different, and I don't care what gender it is. We have to accept that, look, right now, we all know this. We could be blowing up the earth anytime now. We've got, and someone across the ocean there over the pond doing horrible things to women and children. And for what purpose? I don't get it. I never have understood wars to begin with. I protested the Vietnam War in the 60s and 70s. And, this is my reality is how are we ever going to advance as a human race, as a society, if we don't embrace those that are different than us? And we should, and Mara, what you just said, we should respect all people's right to have an opinion, a right to express yourself without using words that hurt, because some words do hurt. Right. And Jamie, we've had some great discussions about all sorts of different things. So I'm going to get off this heavy subject here, because we are getting closer and closer to 420. And I do want to take a break at 420 like we always do. But I want to, first of all, give an update a little bit on Bhang Corporation, Bhang Nation. How is it going with them? I know that you're coming to my native state of Massachusetts because I hang out at the True Leaf dispensary, and Media Day, I believe, is Monday when they have a soft opening of their new dispensary in Framingham. So give us an update on your company, and then Mara, I'll come to you and get an update on your life too.
Things are great. We're I just couldn't be happier. And yes, we are in Massachusetts, and the partnership with True Leaf is going really, really well. And one of the things I'd like to, mention is that, Kim and Valda and Alex, they're the three sort of C-suite people that I deal with at True Leaf. And, Valda Coriat's the CMO and Alex is the CFO and, Kim is the CEO. So you've got these two incredibly smart, competent women, and that work synergistically with Alex as the CFO. And what I find is that they listen to what I have to say. And one of the things that they're really, really doing, not just talking about it, not giving it lip service, but really doing is they do, and they don't do it, they do it just so naturally. They have, they're running an ESG program. You know, they have an environmental social governance program at True Leave. They keep an eye on the things that matter as a corporate culture. So, you know, in cannabis, we have, I always talk about the roots and the suits. You know, my dad's been a cannabis grower for over 50 years, you know, going on 56 years, definitely a root, you know, risked life and liberty for the plant. And what I would say is that I never considered myself a root. I consider myself a suit. And then, you know, you go into these meetings and this happens to me where I'm, you know, I call it out kissing frogs. Like, I'm going to open a new state. I'm going to go talk to all these, you know, invariably it's always guys. I go talk to a bunch of guys about, you know, will you bring Bhang to the state? And, you know, the one exception is in Illinois, I'm dealing with a woman named Laurel Deniff. She runs Bedford Grow, and strong, powerful, really intelligent woman. But to answer your question, it's going great. And I will say this, not all corporate cannabis is evil. And when you're a woman leader, sometimes you have a target on your back. And I just want to say that I'm really happy to be part of the True Leaf family, because I'm on the inside, from a woman that's grown up with a root as a father. I can tell you that they've got their priorities straight.
That's great. Mara, what's the latest on your world? I'm always fascinated with what you're up to. Go ahead.
So I moved to Mexico at the end of January last year. So I've been down here. I'm in La Paz, down down in southern Baja California Sur, and I figured it doesn't really matter where I am, because I'm going to either be on Zoom or an airplane. So what's the difference? And I'm now manufacturing Aunt Zelda's in South Africa and exporting from there. We're in Brazil, and we're looking at other countries that we're moving into now. I am going to be reintroducing Aunt Zelda's into California. I just got so tired of very different than Bhang. We are a 100% strictly medical brand. We've been an R&D company for 11, 12 years now, collecting data around patients. I mean, it's a completely different, it has nothing to do with dispensaries. It has nothing to do with bud tenders. It's a medical discussion. And so after Prop 64, it just didn't really work for us anymore. So I've been reestablishing how to do that. And one of the things that I did was my software platform that physicians use with their patients and whatnot in order to manage their care and set up dosing protocols. And then we are able to use that data for doing preclinical and clinical trials. I used COVID not traveling to rebuild it, to make it scalable so that it's not just for internal use anymore. Now it's starting to have other doctors that are using it. And we're rolling it out strategically so that it doesn't get overwhelmed before I can fix it in case it breaks. And so I'm very excited about the software. I'm very excited about some of the groups that are looking, whether they're insurance companies or medical practices around the country and around the world, to be able to utilize it. I've also been working with a group out of Brazil called We Can Academy, or We Can Endo something. Anyway, but We Can Academy. And the founder of it came to me. She's a neurosurgeon, and she came to me a couple of years ago asking if I would help her develop this, be part of developing this education platform for physicians. And what I said was that I felt like it would be better done by physicians, and I'm happy to participate. But I know how physicians are. Physicians there's exceptions. There's there's a million exceptions. Hyperbole has no business in any of our discussions here, including using the word any. But physicians learn better from physicians. And I'm an engineer. So, I don't have the credibility for some of them. It's going to take somebody whose ego is in the right size in order to be able to handle somebody who's not a physician telling them how to treat their patients. So I said, I'll be happy to participate, but I've been participating quite a lot and teaching classes and whatnot. And then they're the group that are heading up the import into Brazil. So, all of that between, building a house in La Paz, building and rebuilding and deploying our software platform and reintroducing Aunt Zelda's, my plate's fairly full. Yeah.
And that's what makes you alive. It keeps you going, right? It's similar to working in the cannabis space. I really do feel like we're all part of history here. We're rewriting the end of prohibition. We're enlightening the public about this plant and its benefits. And we all have this mission, and the similarities of the passion of the people in the industry, I think, is probably the strongest part of the industry. And you guys have been in it a lot longer than I have, as far as being in a business, as opposed to, I'm much older than both of you. So let's cut to the chase. All right. I get that. Mara, if you want, I'm going to just give you an open invite. If you want to hang out in the Zoom room, you certainly can. If you have something else to do, by all means, go ahead and do it. I know it is busy. And I think if you're in La Paz, I think that's Pacific Coast time, right?
Actually, normally it's mountain time, but we don't change our clocks until November 3rd. April 3rd.
But and by the way, isn't it amazing that the only thing our government could agree on unanimously is to get rid of daylight savings time? I mean, that shows you how pathetic our government is right now. Anyway, I digress because I can. Jamie Pearson from Bhang Nation, hang in there. Mara, up to you. We'd love to have you. But that we are going to take our 4:20 break a few minutes late. But based on what I see in the chat room already, they have already imbibed on a Friday afternoon, and I certainly don't mind that at all. So we're going to take a break.
I just want to say,
yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, Mara, I'm so happy to actually do this with you. We've got a mutual friend, and Bobby Paley. She tells me so much about you and loves you so much, and so I get it. It's the first time I've been on a panel with you.
Yeah, I can't believe it in all these years. Sorry, Jimmy, because it's a mutual admiration where I've been trying to why do our paths not? Because you know what happens? People take and they compartmentalize. She's medical and science, and she's
right.
It's like they just take it, and it's like, no, we're two people working with this plant with different delivery mechanisms at the end of it, but it's, there's room for all of it, and we should all be doing it together, not compartmentalizing it that way. Right. Jimmy, I have my sisters here visiting me, and I'm awesome. Gonna go take her to the beach, but thank you so much for having me. I look forward to next time, Jamie and Jimmy.
Yes,
all right, you got it. There goes Mara Gordon. We're going to take our 4:20 break a little late, and it's time for Shanty.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just... like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. I'm going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's
Pro Cannabis Media and PCM TV programming is supported by Revolutionary Clinics in Massachusetts, the #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 accounting solution for the cannabis industry. And by TCP's Style Lighting Grow Kit, all you need to grow.
difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
All right, welcome back to Green Rush Live on a Friday afternoon. Jimmy Young in the host chair, along with my special guest host, Jamie Pearson. And as you can tell, we have a lot of females on our show today because we want to celebrate the Women in History Month that is March. We did the same thing for African-American people, Black History Month in February. Anybody know what month it is in April? Do we have to get another group in here or not? Because I couldn't tell you what month historically April is going to be. Maybe somebody in the chat room can help me out with that as well. But I want to welcome in a few new guests to us. I see Dani Baranowski is here with us. She is the vice president, co-founder of City Trees in Las Vegas. And I'm pretty sure she's our new Nevada correspondent on We Talk News. Right, Dani?
You got it. And let me just clarify. I'm the brand manager for City Trees and then co-founder, vice president of the Chamber of Cannabis.
There you go.
Doing the most.
Fair enough. Trying to read what I have here. Also joining us in the western part of Massachusetts, the Berkshires, as we like to refer to them, is Meg Sanders from Canna Provisions out there. Meg, great to see you.
Good to see you. And I'm actually coming to you from Holyoke today, but yeah, Holyoke and Lee.
Well, there you go. And
Western
Holyoke,
Mass.
right. And you guys are those the only two locations? Are you guys going for a third license anywhere?
We're currently looking closely at a Boston store. So
woohoo. All right. Little bit easier commute. And also with us now is Brooke Westlake. She is the founder and of the Women in Cannabis Expo. Brooke, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's great to be here and see everybody and have a discussion today for Women's History Month.
So we're going to start with you, Brooke, if you don't mind. Tell us about what you've been up to, what you do with the Women in Cannabis Expo, and then we'll go right around the room. Dani, you'll be next.
Great. Well, as Jimmy said, my name is Brooke Westlake. I'm the owner and founder of the Women in Cannabis Expo. We launched in 2020, had to postpone our first event to 2021, which was still an amazing event. And because it was so amazing, we're hosting 4 expos this year. Our first one is coming up fast and approaching May 26th in Atlantic City, New Jersey. June 30th will be in Denver. September 30th will be in Las Vegas. And then our final show will wrap up in San Francisco at the end of October. So It's been very exciting and lots is moving and shaking.
That's right. And actually, we talked about this right off the top with Jamie and Mara Gordon, who was with us for the first segment of the show. There is a reason why God put this plant on the earth and made the flowering plant, the female, the one that the magic comes from. The males, we just sit there in the corner and cause trouble. But the female plant is really what it's all about. Dani, tell us what's going on in Nevada. There's actually big doings in the state of Nevada. I heard that Planet 13 is expanding to another state. Am I right about that?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. But first we can talk about me and then we'll talk about them.
Okay, go ahead.
So first and foremost, I'm the brand manager for City Trees, a local cannabis company here. And that really ties into my community advocacy work. You know, City Trees is a brand that cares about enriching people's lives and sustaining your state physically, mentally, and in the community. So about 120 days ago, because of the community work that I do, was found by City Trees. And so on that note, Chamber of Cannabis, we are a 501c6 business trade organization, the biggest in Nevada, female founded and female led. We have about 450 individual members and 65 business members, and we did a huge part in campaigning for social consumption lounges. So perpetuating that and also writing into law social equity and diversity and bringing more inclusion into this market. So tying right into bringing more women along with us for the ride. Otherwise, yes, Planet 13, they are a dispensary here in Nevada. And then recently, like you said, opened up, they signed the lease for a Florida location. They're expanding rapidly. Would love to see some female ownership up top in their organization. So looking forward to watching that grow.
There you go. And Meg, bring us up to date on Canna Provisions. You've got the lead location, which has been cranking forever. It seems as soon as you opened up the doors. And of course, you've got Holyoke now as well with a great little function room where thank you and Dan McCarthy for allowing me to interview Stevie Van Zandt when he was out there. So tell us what's going on with you guys.
Yeah, so we're just thrilled right now. Holyoke especially, we just celebrated. I'm not sure if you or the listeners are aware, but Holyoke has the second largest St. Patrick's Day parade in the nation. It is massive. Hundreds of thousands of people come to watch the parade, as well as there's a 10K and all this great stuff that happens in the city. And so we just finished with that. We were really thrilled to see amazing things happening here in Holyoke, new businesses opening. And this is really the grand plan of cannabis reinvigorating a slow kind of a city that really needed some oomph economically, right? And this is just a perfect example of cannabis coming in and other businesses following, because we're bringing people to the city to spend money. So we're super thrilled about that. And then the other thing that we are just loving is partnering with great champions and great brands like Bhang, and many other companies here in Holyoke as well as around the state. And finally, of course, I can't hang up without talking about Ken Dog and our amazing line of flower smash hits. We're the only dispensary I know in the state that actually sells what we call big hits. And that's actually giant flowers that we don't want to break up because they're too beautiful. And so they're each their own individual weight, and people just love seeing them, smelling them, and taking them home. I kind of think some people just hold on to them and never smoke them.
Oh, come on. We know it's a pretty plant. Jamie, as my guest host, sometimes I will throw and toss to you so that you can ask some of these women questions or enlighten them about some of your experiences. So I'm going to allow you to do that, unless you're not going to be able to do it, and then you just throw it back to me and I'll just figure out a way to keep it going.
Oh, there's nothing you could give me that I can't do. So
I had a feeling that was.
No,
Go ahead.
Well, first I just want to say, thank you to the three of you that are joining us. Meg and I are friends, and I've had the privilege of watching her build her business and just be really a leader in the state of Massachusetts. It's been pretty fantastic watching that. She's, like I was telling, earlier, normally when I'm opening a state, I'm dealing with a bunch of men. And so what I've really got is the privilege of working with a really fantastic operator. And somebody's going to walk by me here on the phone. So hang on a second.
That's all right.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
And so anyway, I don't know the other two people here on the panel. So I consider it a privilege every time I come across the path of another really powerful woman in the industry. And now I get to meet two new ones. So what I would like to do is ask both of you your cannabis story.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one to go to. Brooke, go ahead. You could go first.
So cannabis came into my life later on. I had gone and did my master's degree, and I was getting ready to buy a fingerprint drug testing franchise. And my mentor said to me, "You should open a cannabis lab." And I said, "What? Like, I don't know anything about cannabis." I started doing research. This was July of 2019. I went down to MJ Biz in December of 2019, and they had a women's night. And I thought, well, that's great. I did medical trade shows for 10 years. I've got a background in healthcare, completed my master's in criminal justice with my undergrad as well. There was a ladies' night. I was super excited to meet other women in the industry, and they just kind of clumped us in a room. And I thought, well, that's a little strange. And so we went on family vacation, and I thought, I will spend some money. I want to go to some shows geared towards women in this industry. I'm new. I want to see what other women are doing and network. And I couldn't find anything. So I went back to my investors for the lab and said, would you guys feel comfortable with me launching the lab with an expo? And they said, absolutely. So we started full throttle in January of 2020. And by March, we had the whole COVID situation. But later on that year, originally our show was set for September of 2020. August of 2020, I was taken by ambulance to our local hospital. I had an emergency bowel obstruction. They removed 6 inches of my colon. I was in the hospital for a week, didn't walk for 4 days, couldn't eat because they had to reattach everything. And by the end of that year, I had dropped such a significant amount of weight, and I wasn't keeping food down. And I tried cannabis like 20 years ago, and I'd had a really bad experience of like panic attack. So that December of 2020, I went into a local dispensary and said, hey, this is what's going on. I want to try cannabis again, but I had a panic attack. And they were really the ones educating me on how to do microdosing and to start with some edibles and some smaller things. And I'll tell you, in my life, it's really come full circle just on the business component. And then to have it in my life in such a powerful way, I mean, it's honestly keeping me alive at this point. I cannot eat unless I have cannabis. I struggle consistently with stomach issues. And the risk is the kind of surgery that I had, which is emergency, and I almost came within like 3 hours of dying. That whole section of my colon the goal is to get past 4 years post-op. And the reason for that is the whole section could collapse and die out. And so cannabis has really just come into my life on the business front, where having the Women in Cannabis Expo and bringing women together and hearing their stories and how it came into their life, whether they have been an OG to a newer person like myself. And I did not tell them at the dispensary that I worked in the cannabis industry. So my story, I think, is pretty awesome because it's come so first full circle for me personally, and then with my business as well.
Got it. All right, Dani, you're up next.
All right. Well, so I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and stereotypes exist for a reason. So I was Mormon. I had a lovely childhood. And then when I turned 18, I went to college and I had my own version of a Brahmspringer. So I started smoking weed, right? I was 3 weeks into smoking weed with my boyfriend at the time. And we were doing something that I think everyone should do, is smoke weed outside. And so we went to above the mountains, above the Salt Lake Valley, and we're smoking weed. And then all of a sudden, boop, 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 boop. Oh no, it's the police. And I ended up getting arrested and charged with a cannabis felony when I was 18. Yep. So I've been smoking weed for 3 weeks. I had less than a gram of weed. Went to court, United States of America versus Daniel Baranowski, formerly just fresh being out of Mormon, never been in trouble in my goddamn life. And, what happened was I got a plea deal, and I feel very privileged and lucky. I did 15 months of probation, drug testing 3 times a week. I paid a small fine. And then I was put in drug addiction classes with actual drug addicts. And coming out of that, I had the privilege and opportunity to have my record expunged. But I pivoted away and really started leaning into tourism and hospitality. So after surviving a catastrophic hurricane in the Caribbean, but that's another story, I decided, okay, this is a sign that I need to pivot. And, I'm seeing this emerging industry unfold in front of me. I recognize the privilege of my past and what had happened to me. And something that I'm really passionate about is using my talents for public speaking and advocacy, and policy, and volunteering. And how can I intertwine all of those worlds? Well, I can enter this cannabis industry. So I got a job here in Las Vegas. Started out in an ancillary company, working as an international account manager, traveling the world, educating folks on why you would want to do dry herb vaporization and telling people about terpenes. And I just realized there's so much opportunity to educate and share what you're passionate about. And there's so much power just right in front of us. And so once I ended up getting poached and working directly into a Nevada cannabis company, first thing I did was join an advocacy group. And I met my friend Tina, who's the president of the chamber and my co-founder. And we really started building up our community. And during the pandemic, one thing we realized is there was no one, there were patient groups, consumer advocacy groups, but there was no business groups and no one thinking about moving the cannabis industry forward. And simultaneously, our local assemblyman, Steve Yeager, said, hey, I want to pass social consumption lounges. So if anyone has any business ideas to push that forward, let me know and we can do that. So Tina and I, fellow cannabis advocates and community and business leaders said, okay, well, it's high time that we form a coalition and move as one unified voice instead of a bunch of small voices coming at our local legislators. Let's move as one very loud Nevada cannabis voice to get consumption lounges passed, because, we need to change. There's a huge demographics issue here in Nevada and really the entire cannabis industry. But, out of 300 licenses in Nevada, less than 5% were owned by women or people of color. And so presenting our local legislators with this new business model for social consumption lounges has allowed, and now this law has passed. We championed, we did a lot of testifying in Senate hearings and, hired lobbyists, and our female founded and female led organization of, women and people that want to get shit done got this law passed. And now, it's coming up soon that we'll be able to apply for these different licenses, and hoping to change the demographics and bring up other young, talented women along with us in this new opportunity for the industry that truly is. Nevada consumption lounges is going to be the international experience for a lot of folks to try cannabis for the first time, and so excited to be leading that charge.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But and anybody who's been to Las Vegas, if there's one place on earth that there should be social consumption lounges, it is Las Vegas, Nevada. I mean, after all, right? Meg, yeah, your cannabis story, I'm somewhat familiar with it, but you can share with our audience. Go ahead.
My cannabis story is a long one. I've been in this since 2009, where I started in Colorado. And we started when there was no regulations, nothing. And so it was truly the Wild West. And then we had to kind of put the genie back in the bottle as regs rolled out, and we all scrambled to figure it out. And, you know, fast forward, after being the CEO of Mindful for 7 years and building a great business there, we, you know, entered the national world of consulting, helping a lot of states, municipalities and businesses figure out how to get licenses. And then ultimately landed in Massachusetts with several clients and really fell in love with the locations that Canna Provisions had, and they needed operators. So Eric and I hopped on board, and we've been running hard ever since, getting these 2 dispensaries set up, as well as our grow and soon product manufacturing. So we're really, really excited to be in Massachusetts, and we are hopefully going to have a good announcement about New Jersey very soon. And then also we have several things happening in New York, of which we're very, very excited. So we're really going after the Northeast hard. And you know, please look for Canna Provisions everywhere. And until your state goes legal, Canna Provisions is right here to help you. I think we could successfully say we probably sell more weed to more New Yorkers than any other company, including the medical dispensaries in New York.
And you know, the obvious question to follow that up with is that New York is now an adult use legal state. They're just starting their grows, and they're starting to look at licenses. I mean, New Jersey was ready to actually give out licenses, and then they delayed it. We all know this story. It never happens fast enough for people in the cannabis industry, for sure, to get through the rules, regulations, and compliance. Are you concerned about losing some of your customers to New York once they get going, Meg?
Well, I think that's a really fair question. And knowing how these markets roll out, and also knowing kind of the hubbub that's happening right now with some of the rules and regs that were initially sent out recently, and knowing that there's more coming out in May. I think overall, what I know when a state goes adult use is that the consumer base just exponentially jumps. And what I know for sure too is the Berkshires is a vacation destination. 3 million people come year round to visit, to ski, to hike, to see amazing art, amazing music at Tanglewood, etc. So I'm not too terribly worried about that. I think more customers is always good for the industry. It takes a while to get these new states stood up. And so I know we'll have a larger selection for quite a while. And then I think with Holyoke, you know, we're right in the middle of the Pioneer Valley. We're a city of 40,000 people. We're surrounded by 75,000 college students. I feel fairly insulated that, you know, even with Connecticut coming on board, I think we're a solid bet for long-term success here in Massachusetts. But we get asked that question all the time. And honestly, what I know for sure is more legal cannabis equals more consumers, and we all win when that happens.
Yeah, that's great attitude about
Well,
that.
one of the things
Go ahead.
I want to piggyback on what Meg's saying here real quick. And that's
By the way,
that,
Jamie, you jump in anytime because you're the guest host. Okay. So just jump right in. All right.
well, all right. Thank you. I think Meg runs such a good operation. I think one of the things that happens in a free market economy, which, you know, we're supposed to be, you know, a country that's allowing commerce, which the irony of the cannabis trade is that we don't have things like banking and, you know, the ability to buy AdWords on Facebook, or, you know, we just have kind of 2 hands tied behind our back. But Meg has been able to run these really, really high volume operations. And I was just, you know, and recently just, I got to organize my thoughts here. She's been running these high volume operations, but doing it with a real focus on the consumer experience. And one of the things that I'll tell you is, from a retail perspective, there might be businesses in the Berks and in Massachusetts that don't make it when New York goes rec. I think to her point, there's going to be a lot more consumers, but I think no matter what, Canna Provisions is going to make it because they run such a consumer focused dispensary that people, when you go somewhere and you feel welcome and you like your experience, you just keep going back. You don't need to go shop around, or you shop around and you're like, yeah, that blows. I'm going to go back to Meg. And I think that's what's going to end up happening, is that no matter what happens, the Canna Provisions people, and man, I'm in dispensaries all over the country all the time. And I'll tell you that these dispensary owners have a lot to learn from her. I just got back. I was the keynote speaker at the ICBC in Barcelona, and I went to all those consumption lounges. So I wanted to tell you, if you haven't been, have you been to Barcelona and been in all those consumption lounges?
Not, yeah, me neither. Not to Barcelona, not yet.
Barcelona. I know I'm saying it wrong. Barcelona.
I just like saying that.
It'll be interesting. I do think that the cannabis industry has a lot to learn from that environment where consumption lounges are concerned. And I think for Meg and Eric, I think Canna Provisions does a great job. I haven't been to your event, Brooke. I'd be interested to see it and see how it works. And, I want to definitely go to one. So where would we find information about your events for those of the people that are listening and that are also interested? Where would we find those?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jamie, we have 4 shows this year. So hopefully one of the 4 locations would work. They just go to womanincannabisexpo.com. And if you Google my name, or if you start typing in woman in cannabis, our website comes up. It's got all the information, the room blocks. We're still working on some hotel contracts, but we do have our hotel and our room blocks and our tickets up for sale for Atlantic City, New Jersey. And we're going there because they have just newly adopted cannabis.
Right.
And so we really want to bring all those women that are out there who want to go into the business. We want to bring them together. We want to offer them support, inspiration. We want them to meet other women. And so, yes, so just go to womanincannabisexpo.com and you'll see all the
just to be
speakers that we
clear,
have
is
last
it
year.
woman with an A or women with an E?
I'm sorry,
Ooh.
women with an E. 'Cause
Women with an E.
Uh-huh.
Okay, women in cannabis. Got it.
Expo. Women in
Expo.
Cannabis
Women in
Expo.com.
Cannabis Expo.
Awesome.
And
okay, cool.
They can also find us on all forms of social media. We're heavy on Instagram. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, LeafWire, TikTok, YouTube. But of course, all of our prominent information is always going to be on our website.
Brooke, I hope I see you in
Okay.
New Jersey, because that's not too far.
I know. I was going
Yeah.
to say, I need to send Megan an email after this so that you can be with us this year.
I would love it. I would love it. Let's definitely connect.
Yes,
Great.
and I got to go to the first one, I believe, right, Brooke? And
Yes.
it's so refreshing to be around another, a group of women that are, shattering glass ceilings, as cliche as that sounds, but, stomping through and putting ourselves at the table, and also like having the opportunity to lament and to share ideas and share best practices. Like there's something to be said about the sisterhood of people really, building the foundation for an entirely new, industry that doesn't have to follow these like patriarchal standards of all the other businesses that have been laid out before us. Like it's exciting, and it's so refreshing to be around a group of women doing all the same thing, pioneering in their own markets.
Has
And
anybody?
we love having you guys
Go
with
ahead.
us.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, we loved having the Chamber of Cannabis, and Dani and Tina came and spoke, and they're so well versed in everything that they've been doing and are doing. And they were actually the ones who were telling me about the consumption loan licensing. And I was like, oh, do I qualify for that? And they were like, you absolutely do. And if you want to apply, you should. And so they're a force of fire in our state. And I thank them for everything that they have done and continue to do, because they got boots on the ground and they're doing it.
That's great. I just, a show of hands here. The word Instagram came up, and that seems to be a little bit of a subject in the cannabis industry, because they're not very friendly to those who want to share their messaging. Have any of you had any negative experiences on Instagram? Jamie, have you? Oh, yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, recently my profile was hacked,
Yeah.
And which is really, it sucks because, you know, I have all those private messages and pictures of my kids, and it just feels icky. And then they use my name and they contact my contacts and say, oh, I'm trying to do this or that. And then they sucker other people into losing their, you know, so that's just a personal story. But people often contact me and say, why does Bang have like 15 handles? And why aren't you just Bang dot, you know, just at Bang? And I'm like, well, at Bang got shut down, you know, 8 years ago. Then we were Bang Chocolate. Now we're like Bang dot chocolate. And, you know, we got Bang New York and or Bang New Mexico and Bang Washington. You do it because you exist, you build a follower, and then you get shut down. Right now, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 followers, but we know we're shadow banned because you have to type in the entire, you know, you don't just type Bang and everything pops up. Our handle, you've got to get all the way to the end. And really, it's silly. It's time for the Zuck and, you know, his meta group to, you know, get with the program here. It's not a matter of if legalization is going to happen. It's coming. We're here. You know, come on.
I think it's unjust in many ways, and a lot of companies have that same similar story. And as we are finding out, having the word cannabis in our name and on our URL has not exactly enhanced our search, needless to say. But you know what? We're in this for more than just making it as a business. I think everybody on this call, especially in this panel, we're all passionate about this. We all believe that we are part of history, that we can make a difference in people's lives once we educate them about the proper and responsible ways to use cannabis. So, Brooke, I want to thank you for coming on. And I want to thank Dani for not just coming on, but also joining our Weed Talk News team. We look forward to hearing about more and more from Nevada. And Meg, always a pleasure to see you. And please remember me to Dani and also to Eric as well.
Of course. Thanks, Jimmy.
All right, we're going to take a break.
Thanks, everybody.
Jamie's going to hang out with us for the rest of the show. I love that about her. We'll be back with more of Green Rush Live with a whole new panel after this.
It was lovely.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information. Pro Cannabis Media and PCM TV programming is supported by Revolutionary Clinics in Massachusetts, the #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 accounting solution for the cannabis industry. And by TCP's Style Lighting Grow Kit, all you need to grow.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Okay.
All right. Oh, go now would be time to go. Is that what that is? All right. Hi, everybody.
go
Welcome back.
time.
Welcome back. Now we're live again. Welcome back to Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled business of cannabis talk show here every Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock Eastern time. And we love to welcome in all sorts of different guests that we've had on this show. Like I said, please like, share, subscribe to it, whether you want to make an appointment to view it at 4 o'clock on a Friday on the Easter, or you can get it on demand on our YouTube channel. Also find it on our LinkedIn Live, our Facebook, and our Twitch channel. That's right. We've got one of those Twitch channels too. Joining us in this half hour of this show is an old friend, someone who was a regular guest host on the Weed Talk show that actually birthed Green Rush Live, is Kurt Dalton from cannabis.net. Hi, Kurt.
Good to see you, James. How are you?
Very good, sir. So it caught my eye this week. I subscribed to the Kurt Dalton newsletter on cannabis.net, on LinkedIn, or wherever I got the subscription. And the headline, "The Future of Cannabis is Female." Kurt Dalton, you wrote it. So why do you think the future of cannabis is female?
Well, I think the buying patterns and how this is going to go in the future as far as actually ordering and picking up the product will be, if we're seeing things like grocery shopping and getting errands done, will be female oriented. And that newsletter you're talking about is on the LinkedIn side, but it came after the Canna Bro bullying article, which got a lot of attention and a subject certainly for another show, but needs to be talked about. And also, I think brands, as much as I criticize branding right now, are missing the boat on having enough females in the C-suite, as well as nodal positions, whether it's graphics or managers making decisions on brand. I'm sure Jamie can talk to this. What the female consumer is looking for in a cannabis product, and what's appealing to them, say in packaging and amounts of THC and stuff like that.
Go ahead,
I
Jamie.
could go on for days about that. But I would, oh man.
Well, wait, hold the thought. You think about the right answer and where you want to go with that. I want to introduce the other two people on the panel, if that's okay.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is it's not really so much interesting about what I think, because I haven't met Rebecca. Dr. Lakisha and I are part of the female mafia, so we know each other. And I'm so happy to see your face. It's good to see you. So anyway, I'd like to hear from Rebecca and Dr. Lakisha, because I think everyone's already sick of hearing my voice.
That's not true. But Rebecca Abraham, a registered nurse and the president of Acute on Chronic, explain your background and how you got involved with cannabis.
Yeah, so I'm a cannabis nurse. So my space in cannabis is pretty new in the industry and pretty unique. So what is a cannabis nurse? So I noticed in my career, my husband's a physician, my best friend's a physician, that in hospitals, lots of patients are asking about cannabis and no one has answers for them. I come from an academic setting. I was a board certified critical care nurse. I did policy, I did case management. On the dispensary side and on the cannabis industry side, there's nobody really to answer those questions either. Some of the information is made up and there's a lot of bro science that happens on the industry side. So I got a certification in cannabis nursing, pairs really well with critical care background, and started collaborating with physicians and cannabis companies to educate and guide patients towards exactly what they should be using. This led to lots of happy patients, lots of happy people in both medicine and the cannabis industry, and even to research. So me and my business partner, Dr. Ryan Buck, we actually are presenting a case study at a very legitimate, the Society of General Internal Medicine in 2 weeks about a patient that had a fantastic result with guided cannabis care. And so we kind of keep coming up to these case studies. We're starting to collaborate with other physicians in this space and other nurses. So that's what we do at Acute on Chronic is we consult for cannabis companies and dispensaries. We provide education, but then we do direct patient to doctor education, patient to patient. And that's what we do. And it goes extraordinarily well.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And I know plenty of cannabis nurses out there and starting to see more and more cannabis doctors getting involved. And speaking of doctors, that's a segue. That's what we call a segue. Okay, Jamie, is Dr. Lakisha Jenkins out of Jamaica. Dr. Lakisha, where in Jamaica are you?
I'm in Kingston, Jamaica. That's where I'm based. Yes.
And that is, I'm pretty sure that's still the capital of Jamaica. Am I right?
It is, absolutely.
I remember my fifth grade education. Dr. Lakisha, it says here you're a traditional naturopath, an endocannabinoid specialist, and a clinical compound herbalist. Can you explain exactly what that means to the audience?
So being a traditional naturopath means that, number one, I believe in living as close to nature as possible. And number two, that we really believe that there's one illness, and that's the absence of health, whatever that means for you. And our job is to help you get back to homeostasis or balance, the optimal working condition, of the human body. And as a compound herbalist, my core competencies are really utilizing herbs as the basis of nutrition to combat the symptoms of chronic degenerative and terminal illness. So I have a working knowledge of a number of botanicals and the way that they work nutritionally with the human body. But the reason that I'm an educator on the endogenous cannabinoid system is because it's our regulatory system. It's our master regulator and actually has the ability to induce homeostasis. So if my job is to bring you into balance, then it would really make sense for me to focus on the master regulator and helping you understand the physiology of it and ways that you can use phytocannabinoid supplements nutritionally to induce that balance or homeostasis.
There you go. That's great. And Kurt, you've gotten to know me, and the two of us spent some time in Jamaica. When it comes to balance, my name and face really don't fit, right? I mean, you know that about me.
Not in Jamaica, but maybe in Southie. But I was going to ask: where is Kingston at on cannabis? Is it really developing in the capital, or are we seeing it more where the conferences are on the coast? Kind of where's the city of Kingston on cannabis development?
Well, being that the city of Kingston is the capital and that's where all the government offices are, that's really why I'm here. I do serve on the Health and Wellness Committee of the Board of Directors of the Cannabis Licensing Authority for the country of Jamaica. So a lot happens here, the Ministry of Industry, Investments and Commerce, of which the cannabis industry itself falls under, are all here. All of the departments, the Jamaica Promotions Corporation, the Friendly Societies organizations, all of them are here in Kingston. I think that the conferences are usually in the tourist areas because that's where people like to travel. So you like to mix a little bit of business and pleasure. But as far as the business end of cannabis, it's definitely happening in Kingston. This is definitely the hub for that.
Got it. Thank you.
There you go. And I got to ask the question of everybody on this call. A lot of people, when it comes to the medical community, it still is kind of on the outside looking in. Okay. Even in Massachusetts, I think there was like a 3-week conference on basically banishing the marijuana word from the medical community and turning it into just using cannabis sativa, which of course is the name of the plant. So how challenging is it? Is this plant that has medicinal qualities a plant or a drug? And what is the right answer for that? And let's start with the Dr. Lakisha. Go ahead.
So I would say that I more liken it to a vegetable, a nutritional supplement, to be honest. Our endogenous cannabinoid system really is, we're hardwired to interact nutritionally with phytocannabinoids, not just from the cannabis plant, but there are a number of botanicals that have it. So besides just being medicinal or therapeutic, nutritional supplementation of the endogenous cannabinoid system is actually necessary. Our brain produces endogenous cannabinoids naturally, but we don't produce enough. Just like we don't produce enough vitamins, minerals, amino acids to keep our body, operating optimally, we have to nutritionally supplement through foods. It's the same thing with the endogenous cannabinoid system and nutritional supplementation with phytocannabinoids.
So Rebecca, my RN on the panel here, plant, drug, or vegetable?
I would say D, all of the above, and everything. I agree with everything Dr. Lakisha said. Literally everything, because we're starting to map in preclinical trials. A lot of disease processes may be, in fact, a endocannabinoid deficiency sort of syndrome, maybe fibromyalgia, maybe chronic pain syndrome, maybe chronic fatigue syndrome, it may be even things like bipolar disorder. A researcher out of Northwestern questioned that in a preclinical study about a year ago. I say D, all of the above, because when I talk to patients about cannabis, I say that think of it like if you combined ibuprofen with coffee and wine and food all together. Because the plant is so unique, and it's something called a biphasic botanical. Biphasic means that depending on the dose and depending on the person, it could kind of change the mechanism of action. A way we see this in really interesting studies, and tell me if I'm getting too boring, is, for example, with HIV patients, in early studies from the 90s, we saw cannabis boosting their immune system. We saw a little bit of increase in their white blood cell counts. That's what the little Pac-Mans that kind of fight off viruses and bacteria. And then in COVID studies out of Israel, we quite see the opposite. We see this immunosuppressive effect where people aren't getting respiratory distress as much. They're not dying from something called a cytokine storm. So we can see cannabis splits off and does two jobs, but is the same plant. And that's why it's D, all of the above for me, because it could be a recreational substance like alcohol, and probably a very healthier one too. There's just more medical benefits to cannabis than there are to alcohol, and it's significantly safer. Same thing, you could use it as an anti-inflammatory, again, much like ibuprofen and Motrin and Advil, again, much safer, does the same job of anti-inflammatory. And then it is also definitely a nutritional supplement. So I'm D, all of the above.
There you go. Jamie, I got to bring you back in and ask you the same question. Plant, drug, medicine. How do you, what category do you put the plant in? Oh, she's muted.
Muted.
Oops. Hi, Jamie.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
The statistics show that the majority of users, even in rec states, use cannabis for medical reasons.
Right.
So the reality is, whether you're using cannabis as a social lubricant, which a lot of people drink wine for that reason. The reality is, when you are done drinking wine, the next day, your body's expelling it out of your system because it's poison. 30 days after you've imbibed in some form or fashion of cannabis, your body's probably still going to test positive because it hangs on to cannabis because we need it. We have an endocannabinoid system. As Dr. Lakisha says, it is the system that is regulating everything else. So I think it's obvious that cannabis is medicine. So I also think food is medicine. And I think it is one of the things that we don't look at, food as medicine. But we also know that, it is. If you eat right, you eat clean or you eat poorly, your body is going to have an impact on it. So we also enjoy eating food that tastes delicious and that gives you an effect. So in the same way, I feel like all of these things that we do, when we sleep right, get a massage, use acupuncture, use plant-based medicine, whether it's cannabis or mushrooms or, and I'm not just speaking about psilocybin, but I'm also talking about just the aptogenic mushrooms, lion's mane, turkey tail. There's so many things that this planet and nature have provided to us that make us feel better, that we can do for ourselves. And if we make time to take care of ourselves, we feel better and we achieve homeostasis. But if we are out of balance, we're not sleeping enough, we're eating too much, we're not exercising, we exercise too much. I mean, all things in moderation, even moderation, I think are what get us where we need to be. And yes, I think cannabis is medicine in that same regard. So is
Kurt,
sleep.
when it comes to homeostasis, I don't think of you, but I do want to come back to you. Okay. And tell me, please, where do you categorize the plant?
Well, I was going to say ibuprofen, wine, coffee, and a burger. That's not cannabis. That's Friday night for me. This will not be a popular answer. We have in that same newsletter an article called "Are You a Cannabis Stan?" going on the Eminem song, and the cannabis stands who say it's a plant, it's not a drug. Well, it passes through the blood-brain barrier. It slows your reaction time. It gives you that euphoric high. It alters your reality, however we're going to call it. So it is a drug. I mean, that is a drug, and I think something like maybe Rebecca knows, like 70% of pharmaceuticals drugs trace back to plants. So it's okay to be both. So I give the D answer. It's everything. And I also say it's like kale and broccoli to people. So I'm all in on the veggies, but it is a drug and it's okay. It's like, so is your caffeine or, making coffee. It's the boogeyman if we call it a drug, but it is a drug and a plant and a vegetable. So I'm going D as well.
Yeah. Coffee comes from a plant and it,
So there's a follow-up. There's a follow-up to my discussion here. Okay. If and when we do see legalization at the federal level in the United States, which of those departments would you like to see regulating cannabis? Is it the Food and Drug Administration? Is it the DEA? Or is it the Department of Agriculture? Or do we create another layer of bureaucracy and regulations and have a federal cannabis commission? And Kurt, I have a feeling you have an opinion about this. We'll start with you and then we'll go back around to Jamie and everybody else. Go ahead.
That's a great question. And I'm thinking quickly, certainly not the DEA and probably not the FDA. So I'm going vegetable. I'm saying, let's make it like kale and broccoli. And that would open up the most opportunity for people to benefit, not only from the plant, but on the business side.
So Department of Agriculture is where you'd like to see it.
I think that'd be the best for the cannabis industry.
Yeah. Jamie, what's your feeling on that?
I would like it to be revenue or commerce. I'd like it just to be regulated like a business, like the same way that, clothing, breakfast cereal, any other CPG is regulated so that we can get into consumer or interstate commerce and consumer packaged goods. Because I think if we know that nobody's ever died of an overdose, yes, it can alter your brain, but kids can get into coffee too. You know what I mean? So I would rather see the entities around commerce regulating it and getting information rather than those. I agree with Kurt. The reason I'm not sure I'm a fan of the Department of Agriculture is that they really don't understand the shelf space model and some of those other items, because we've got a lot of things that are going on. So maybe Federal Trade Commission. I don't know.
All right.
I'll call it.
I don't know.
What do you call it? Tobacco.
All right. So Rebecca will come to you next. Come on.
So I have
we got nurses and doctors here. I'm really interested to hear.
I have a very strong opinion about this. So I am definitely not the DEA. They should have never been involved ever with cannabis because the federal run restriction is totally bogus because they say there's no therapeutic use at the same time that the FDA has allowed and patented and greenlit Marinol since the 90s, Epidiolex,
So dumb.
So that I can't believe it. Like the contradiction is very obvious. I don't love any of the departments. If you pull my leg and make me answer, I'm going to go agriculture, but asterisk, big disclaimer is all of these departments are unfortunately so corrupt because of the moneyed interest in lobbying and in Washington that it's hard to pick a department that won't mess this up. Maybe commerce, we have the best shot at. The FDA cycles through lobbyists from the pharmaceutical company. You have literally senators that are like top CEOs at pharmaceutical companies, work in the Senate, go right to lobbying, and then get jobs at the FDA. And you see the same thing in agriculture, Senate, Monsanto, lobbyist, Department of Agriculture. So if we, in my dream world, we push these moneyed interests out of the government and we make laws against lobbying and holding lobbyists and government positions after you've been a lobbyist or senator or sitting politician, I would feel probably most comfortable in commerce and agriculture.
All right, great. Dr. Lakisha, our doctor on this panel, even though you're in Jamaica, I'm sure you have an opinion about how the federal government is doing with this particular substance in the United States. Where do you think this plant medicine should be regulated?
Well, even though I'm in Jamaica, I'm from California, and I was the owner operator there for over a decade.
Okay.
And I was the founding president of the California Cannabis Industry Association. And while we worked on the regulations that regulated the medical cannabis industry, I worked really hard to ensure that in California, at least, the cultivation of cannabis is under the California Department of Food and Agriculture. I'm a little biased because I come from the agricultural community, and we are the #1 agricultural producer in the United States on less than 1% of the farmland. I won't get on my soapbox about that. But being in the international market, it's all about commodity codes that govern international trading. Let's talk about that. The commodity and tariff codes that are assigned to dangerous drugs are a lot different than the ones that are assigned to agricultural commodities. So when you're looking at the global cannabis industry, how it's developing, the fact that the United States of America has no role in that whatsoever, I would definitely say that for a lot of reasons, and my bias, I'd like it to fall under the entire food and agriculture. It's an agriculture, it's a plant, it grows.
There you go. That was a great, everybody had chimed in, and that was awesome.
The only last department I would toss in is maybe Health and Human Services, because I think if we boosted public health more, I think cannabis has an absolute place there, but that's in my fantasy land.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Jamie, you're still with us, right? I know that you're multitasking because you are.
You know, I am.
Yeah. So we've figured out now where we think it should be placed. We also recognize that there are a lot of males that are in charge of money in this country. Okay. They seem to be controlling a lot of the private equity acquisitions that are out there and on a regular basis. Are there, and Jamie, I'm going to come right back to you and ask you, are there any female-led private equity companies out there that are looking at cannabis investments that you know of?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I know Jean Sullivan's at ArcView, and she's everybody loves Jean, and we love the ArcView group.
I mean, Jean Sullivan's also a member of the Female Mafia, and but ArcView is, male run.
Right.
I'm there, of course, I'm blanking on the names, but there are 3 that I can think of that I know of for sure that are in the cannabis space that are actively all female-led funds, and they invest in female and BIPOC businesses. They do exist, but I can think of 3.
Yeah.
That means it isn't that it's not equal.
I was going to say, out of how many, right?
Men absolutely control the money. And that's one of the things when we were talking about the earlier, when Kurt was saying that the cannabis future is female. Yes, women make 85% of all the purchasing decisions in the household. But the reason you don't see women running a majority or even half the population's female, half the dispensary owners are not female, half the population's female, half the funds are not female. I could go on and on and on about this, but why is it that way? It's because there's no access to money. And one of the things we talk about in the cohort, which is the proper term for the female mafia, is that what we're trying to work on is getting women-run and BIPOC-run businesses access to money. And one of the things that happens, and man, people get sick of hearing this, but I'll tell you the truth. I have a beard. I hired a beard. I hired a guy when I'm in meetings and I know I'm going up against a man who is not going to listen to me and take me seriously. I give the message to my beard and I say, and he knows he's my beard. He knows that's his job. And I say to him, here's what you're going to present to this guy, because he won't hear it from me. And I wish I could tell you that I don't have direct evidence that is necessary, but I can tell you one example. I gave a presentation, PowerPoint. They said no. I gave the same PowerPoint to my beard, didn't change a date, didn't change a font, didn't change a thing. And they were like, this is brilliant. Wow. This is what happened. This is the reality that we're dealing with. And until men who have probably hidden bias, they don't even know that they're doing this. I guarantee you the man that told him my presentation was brilliant did not know it was my presentation and did not realize that he just can't look at me and take me seriously, because frankly, he spent the majority of the time staring at my chest.
Right.
The reality is that is the shit we deal with. It is our reality. And I'm more sick of it than you are listening to it. You people out there that are like, oh God, here they go again. But it's the reality. And what I would tell you is the future female, not until we have access to money.
There you go. And Kurt, I know when Jamie referred to her beard, you immediately thought of James Harden, didn't you?
Yeah, she's got the beard. He's got a lot of teams. He's been around this year.
Kurt knows everything in my world comes back to sports one way or another. Rebecca Abraham, how do people find you?
They find me through word of mouth, podcasts like this. I do a lot of speaking engagements and from their physicians, nurses, physical therapists, the memory care units that they're on. So very much word of mouth. I also have been trying to get funding, and everything Jamie said is right. I've heard some really terrible things. I did indeed bring my physician friend on to be my business partner, because same thing and same problem in medicine. Like the fact that I'm getting a doctorate in nursing makes me a little more listened to, and that I could teach people things they don't know, and I say the right medical words gets me in the door. Having a cisgendered white physician MD as my co-founder has opened a lot more doors up for me, unfortunately. And we have tried the social experiment, even though I'm the one who taught him everything he knows. I got him his books. I taught him. People knew I was a cannabis nurse about a year before he even joined me. And they will still direct all of their questions to him as I sit there. It makes me so crazy. And the same thing, I had one investor tell me that I should really consider getting a sugar daddy to get funded. That was, and this is this was not a cocktail party. This was a 10 a.m. Zoom on a Thursday. I was like, oh, okay, let me talk to my husband about that.
It's like shopping for a car, right?
I wish. So you essentially hired a beard as well.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Look at Kurt. We're getting beat. Our gender's getting killed here, but we're just certainly we deserve it. Dr. Lakisha, how do people find you in Jamaica, in Kingston?
You're on mute.
Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
Well, I'm global, so you can find me everywhere. I'm not just always in Kingston. You can really find me everywhere. I'm super easy to find on the internet, on all social media. I'm the @ Dr. Lakisha, all spelled out just the way it is there on my heading. And you can also find me at drlakisha.com.
There you go. That's it. Hey, I want to thank our panelists for coming in here for this half hour. Appreciate it. Kurt, always a pleasure to see you. And I always get a laugh out of you, which we really appreciate. All right.
Yeah, no problem.
Cannabis.net is where you go to read more about Kurt, although he's everywhere these days. We're going to take a break and we'll come back with our final panel. Green Rush Live continues after this.
Bye, Lakisha.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information. Pro Cannabis Media and PCM TV programming is supported by Revolutionary Clinics in Massachusetts, the #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 accounting solution for the cannabis industry. And by TCP's Style Lighting Grow Kit, all you need to grow. Back to the final half hour of Green Rush Live. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host today. We are going to go into a rotation of hosts, hopefully over the next few weeks, so this OG can get a few days off. All right, that's pretty much why I'm doing that. But I do want to welcome in some new panelists for us. Kema Ogden is with us, and Kema is a legend, and I'm going to let her explain that in a minute. Amie Reiman is here. She's the founder and CEO of Hip Lives, and I believe I've got Vivian Vu is with us, and she's the CEO and founder of Joy Reserve. So, Amie, let's start with you. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about Hip Lives Inc.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Because by the way, people know that I'm painfully unhip. So I just want to throw that out there. Go ahead. Tell us about Hip Lives. Maybe I can learn something.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Amie. Hip Lives actually is an acronym for Health in Progress and also Healing in Plants. So been around for a few years. am in Canada, so just across the pond from you. And and primarily started due to my son's needs. He's one of the first pediatric prescriptions of cannabis in Canada before legalization. So started out as a testimony and advocacy for him. Grew from there during the pandemic more into a holistic health platform where we do everything from the healing in plants to the healing of our minds and bodies. So
there you go. That was terrific. Vivian from Joy Reserve. Vivian, tell us about Joy Reserve and where are you coming from?
Thank you, Jimmy. We are in San Francisco. We are the first cannabis showroom inside Westfield Mall. And
wow.
Yes. Thank you. We just opened in November, and we've been very grateful. It's all of our retailers' partnership here, and especially Westfield. And so more to come before the end of the year, actually.
Are you dispensing cannabis out of that?
So it is a showroom. So we actually do not have any live product inside the store. However, hey Casey, can you give me a QR code real quick? I'll show you.
Get the QR codes out.
Get the QR code out. So
There you go.
all of our table displayed with a QR code that customer can place their order and have it picked up or delivered to home.
There you go.
Wow.
So you can
Very
still get
cool.
weed at a mall when you come right down to it. That's very cool. Kema Ogden is the first African-American owner of a dispensary in Nevada. And that's why I just deemed you a legend, Kema. Oh, unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Started our company back in 2015. One of the first licensed medical cannabis companies with as a co-owner with a couple partners of mine. And, we've just been hitting the ground running ever since. So thank you, Top Notch, the health center in Nevada.
And Nevada is a pretty friendly state. I mean, they're moving very fast towards getting the social clubs going. But I would think as an African-American female, is it more difficult? Of course it is. Or easier? No, it's not, to be in business, right?
Oh, it's as a woman and a minority, it totally is. It's always challenging for us as women in general in business to get anything going, right? But yes, being African-American woman in this industry, especially as you know, Black and brown communities are, not represented in this industry. So there's a lot of issues there, but so yeah, it's extremely challenging to say the least.
Right. Oh no. Let's throw in cannabis just to make it even easier, right? The most regulated industry that's ever come out of in history right now. So it's never easy being in this space. Jamie, I want to ask you and tell me if I'm wrong here. We've certainly got into some of the questions I wanted to talk about, but there's one in here that I have not shared, and I'm going to throw this out to Jamie first. Did the Me Too movement impact passionate entrepreneurs to get into the cannabis space? Do females and women in general look at cannabis as an opportunity?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I don't feel qualified to speak on behalf of all women, frankly.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how Me Too would have caused somebody to want to get into cannabis other than, I will say this. There was a debate that I participated in a couple months ago about the governor of New York who got Me Too'd. And there was this, lamenting of, oh, we lost this really great politician, blah, 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 blah. And I basically objected and I said, well, here's the thing. He may have had talents in the political sphere, but speaking from a woman's perspective that I have had, I will tell you that the norm is for a man in business to put their hand on my shoulder or on my leg or at the small of my back, or it's really unusual when men don't take those liberties, frankly. I can tell you that I've never put my hands on a man unsolicited in business. I don't, enter your physical space, but mine gets entered a lot. And so when he got Me Too'd, the thought that went through my head was, those first 2 or 3 women may have just been seeking their 10 minutes of fame. Okay, we'll give the guy the benefit of the doubt. But then woman number 4, 5, 6, 7, then you're kind of like, I don't know. And then woman like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, then I'm like, F that guy. Because here's what's wrong. You put your hand on me, and then I either have to be that B and say, get your hand off me, or I have to be that woman that lets you leave your hand on me and I'm complicit somehow in this understood, I took my liberty with you. Now, that's a lot to deal with. I'll be honest, sometimes this man that you're sitting across the table from might have the money that women don't normally have access to. And I might be like, oh, am I going to let him just put his hand on my leg so that maybe I can get that check and then I can go be the master of my own destiny? That might drive me to want to get into cannabis. Okay, that's the stretch I'll make. but that's the only stretch I'll make as far as why would Me Too drive women into cannabis. Me Too is a real thing. And one of the things that it did for me, I mean, and I go back to, I was a women's studies major undergrad. I realized how often I had either been complicit and just grin and bear it so that I can, move on with the business meeting that I'm trying to have. And how many times that I just was like, oh yeah, that's just what happens. And I realized I shouldn't have to have put up with that nonsense. And how many times did I? And it gave me pause, and it made me realize that these are the opportunities where I'm going to stop being quiet. I'm going to be that person that's going to say, get your effing hands off me. And what makes you, you just got to start speaking up. And so that's what the Me Too movement, it just sort of helped me find my voice in that regard.
And that was a great answer. And I appreciate you sharing those stories with us. I do want to get Kema's, let me ask you the same kind of question. Kema, why did you get into cannabis? Go ahead.
Well, for me personally, I was very passionate about health and wellness. I owned a gym at that time, so I was already an entrepreneur. I had health and wellness programs for the underserved population with a nonprofit and things. So it was very easy transition for me to kind of, because I care about this as a medicinal plant. It's a healing plant. All the research that I did in regards to that, it was just an obvious transition. So, but to go back to what Jamie was saying about the Me Too movement, what I found, because as a person who hires and terminates, I'm sure everybody in here has the same experience. It just really gives women more. I think the Me Too movement gave people more confidence in the workplace, Jamie said, to speak up, to actually feel protected, to not tolerate it and not hush. Like we've dealt with for years, forever. It's actually a culture. It's we're so accustomed to you invading our space or making little comments or, putting us in this little box or, all these things that women deal with in business that we had to overlook now is not really being tolerated. Women are demanding a lot more respect in the workplace. Women are really coming out, speaking up on it. Discrimination is taken more seriously in corporate America. They have to act. Before, it'd be, hey, toughen up, tighten up your bra strap, whatever. Now, corporate America is really, they'll be held to the gun. I mean, people will sue you, they will come after you, and they're a lot more prone to it. They're a lot less afraid. And, I think with the Me Too movement, it changed the way corporate America addresses this. So I think it was a good thing.
Right. And then the pandemic shut down corporate America for a couple of years, and now they're going back into the office. And I'm really interested to hear what might happen next. Vivian, I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about this subject too.
I agree with everything that everybody has mentioned here. It's different in any capacity of like any minority in general, and for myself and what Camille was mentioning, women, queer, light skin and things of that nature, it's all impacted. And like when going back to corporate America, I do see things have been changing a little bit. There's been a few more media at least of showing that there are more women being in these leadership roles, which is great to just having that type of exposure. Cause like, okay, that kind of gives us hope, right? Like, hey, there's things that are moving towards a better place to give us an audience and also like the opportunity to present ourselves. And I do think that, I'm still very hopeful for things to move forward in that process.
I want to talk about.
I'm going to pipe in. Look
yes, do it, women. Jamie. Go for it.
Look at these three women right here. I mean, when you just got done telling, I haven't met any of you, and it's such a privilege. And then I think you tell your stories, and my jaw drops. All three of you have done these incredible things, and I mean, look at what happens when women have opportunity. They, I get pretty passionate about it when I think about Jacinda in New Zealand and the Prime Minister of Scotland and, the Sin countries doing these, they're not measuring gold and silver anymore. They don't care about what the GDP is. They care about the wellness quotient, Like women come in and start taking wellness because look, we're responsible for the wellness of our families and the wellness of our households. And, we make 85% of all the purchasing decisions. And then you go, well, I'm Asian, I'm queer, I'm light skinned. And I would imagine that there are people that are watching this that are like, huh? How does that matter? But I know that's your reality every single day. You bump up against that. Someone makes some stupid comment or, all of us, we all have our own stories. And then you give women a little bit of money or a little bit of opportunity and look at what happens. Look at this. Look at these women. Look what they do. It's amazing.
I love that. Amie, I apologize. I want to bring you back in and let you comment a little bit about this discussion that we've had here.
I think it's a really good one because I left a corporate role. I mean, things were stable, they were secured, absolutely no reason to kind of jump ship, but it was a level playing field. We were all kind of starting in something, at least before legalization in Canada, with myself in a boys club. Naturally, we were all learning at the same time. And I found that the quicker I learned, the more confident I felt in those rooms where I was the only woman, and, just kind of feeling that sense of power, I suppose, in the early days, and just having the answers before a lot of these, white guys with money. It gave me that perseverance just to keep on going at what I was advocating for, which was like, the passion for the plant and the changes it was making medicinally in my son as a single mother, talking about that in a child who was 7 at the time, taking cannabis. I mean, all the stigmas just, left, right, and center. But it really gave me just like that boost that I needed just to keep on driving myself further, for sure.
So how are we going to offer opportunities to women to get into cannabis, be the entrepreneurs that we hear about? And is there a role for these multi-state operators who are starting to dominate this space a tad? And I'm starting to hear that they want to do some programs to offer back to those who have been most impacted by the failed war on drugs. But we're so early in the development of the industry, nothing has happened this quickly, because as you know, in cannabis, nothing happens quickly. Jamie, do you deal with multi-state operators all the time? I'm guessing because you want your product in as many stores as possible. Are you starting to sense that they see an obligation to perhaps help out a female-led company like yours?
I wish I could say yes. I think there's a lot of lip service given, and I think, and it doesn't mean that they're not really interested in supporting women and people of color. I think there is interest, but I don't think they know how. And I think it's it's not just something you throw money at. Right. I mean, money definitely helps, but I think some of our issues are so systemic, and so one of the things I talk about a lot is, look, cannabis is in prohibition. So we can make this industry look any way we want.
Right.
And really, there's no need to wait for someone to, invite you to have a seat at the table. Just bring your chair. Mm-hmm. Just decide what you're going to do. And the women that I'm looking at right here, I don't know your individual stories about how you built your businesses. But what I'll say is I've met a lot of women that are running fantastic businesses in cannabis, and none of them got put there by some MSO. They just did it themselves and figured it out. And I think the one thing about cannabis that is really an advantage of being in prohibition is that we're all sort of at a disadvantage equally, and it kind of forces everybody to work together. So I wouldn't necessarily send women or people of color to an MSO looking for help. I would say, bring your chair and find people like the women that are all sitting here that can show you the ropes and show you who the friendlies are and show you who to avoid and those kind of things. I think it's definitely a network of people who are like-minded and who love the plant, love each other, not to be hokey, but for real. And that's what it takes. I wouldn't necessarily be looking at the MSOs. Right. That's just my 2 cents.
Just thought I'd throw that out there. Amie, tell us a little bit about how you got into what you're doing. Go ahead.
Really just through my son's story and my own. I had some traumas. I was also healing. So it was really, describing that to people and figuring it out. They say, it's all about the trial and error. So as I had my journey, I spoke to people about that. Then I just found with the connectivity, especially here in Canada with the women, we were really supporting each other. So different events and different ways that we could connect and just kind of grow each other's businesses. It was, to me, unnatural because there was so much competitiveness in every other industry I'd ever been in, and just rising with these other women and building each other up and figuring it out, as Jamie said, as we go. There was no really right or wrong way. I mean, there's definitely ways that I went and then it turned around and went back the other way. But it was just natural for me. And I think even still, I'm not at the goals I set out to originally. I've taken a few different paths since then. And, just working with a lot of people in the US has opened up a huge market for me. So kind of just going with the flow internationally, such a huge opportunity overseas. So lots of networking just keeps me like right in it because the conversations never end.
Yeah. And
Vivian, how did you get that figured out with the mall? I'm curious. I'm dying to know this. I'm sorry. And then I want to talk to you as well, Kema, about how did you end up getting a dispensary license? So let's start first with Vivian, because we got to hear Amie's story. I want to just hear the background stories on these two incredible women.
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah. We were definitely not the first person to ask Westlake this opportunity. We were just willing to work within their policies and their own guideline that they had. This was not just like a quick, fast money type of opportunity that we were looking for. We were willing to grow and do this as a long-term process because we knew that they needed to, feel comfortable being a partner in this process. And so, as I mentioned, we don't have any live products because that's part of their own policy that they don't have any drugs within their premises. And so hence why we made this model where we are just a showroom. We do sell every single product that we have in our shop. However, it is brought over by our facility, all legal, all legitimate, and it's curbside pickup, or if it's somebody at the hotel or, at home in San Francisco. And
how do I get Bhang into your shop?
Send me a message after this. I'm happy to look at it.
Okay, will do.
And as I mentioned, going back to the community and bringing people together, one thing we do really great here is that we have a maker's market where we have like a mini Hall of Flower type of experience. Cool. Where about 20, 30 of our vendors come in, they booth out inside the hall of the mall, not just inside our shop. And then we partner up with, local businesses that makes like handcraft jewelries, pots, candles, fashion, anything. They booth up. We don't take any money from that experience. Whatever sales they make, they keep, because we want to really build up San Francisco again.
Are they going to let you expand into other markets?
Correct. Yes.
That's cool. Okay.
We have verbal conversation of expansion that I can't disclose just right now, but we are focusing on California, and then go from there.
And Kema, when did you get your license? What year did you get your license?
2015 is when we opened up for. So we were part of that first initial 2014 application process. At that time I think there was 8 states. Only in the medical space. We opened up 2015 for medical and then 2017 for recreational around then.
So did you have a group and backers, or did you do this on your own, or how did you decide you were going to go for this license?
I have 2 partners. In itself is rare. Most of these companies have 10 people, a bunch of owners going together, and no one, 20 years before they can get their investment back. So we are very fortunate. I was very fortunate to partner up with a couple of people who had background in growing and brokering in California, north and, and different things like that. So I had a lot of experience in cannabis. Went through the process, a little pixie dust, some unicorn hooves, a little sprinkle of luck and shake it all, skill, I mean, let's face it, as women, as minorities, all of us are, it's, you have to do way more than everybody else, right? So, I checked every box. I had it all, and funding as well. I had my own funding. My partners had funding too. We applied for the dispensary license as well as the cultivation. We got both of those, but everyone asked me the same thing because it's like a miracle when it happened, especially at that time, because it was just rolling out. And as we know, there's a lot of, not so, straight up things happening on the back end of this, a lot of shadiness when it comes to the licensing process and things like that, and we didn't have to participate in any of that. But once again, just checking all the boxes to the point, over checking, you got to be more qualified, more everything, more knowledgeable, more compassionate, more, I damn near had to be more Mother Teresa before I even got in here. I was already giving out everything I could give out to the community, and so for them to tell me no, I was going to make it as hard as possible for them to tell me no. And, doing all your due diligence, everything it takes. So, and once again, as you know, in business in general, everything has to line up. There's a degree of luck in there in any business. Opportunity doors have to open and things like that for success. But in this industry, it's even more so. And like you said, Jamie, earlier, you have to actually kick the door open. I had to be very aggressive with this. I had to be, when I was going into these meetings initially, trying to learn about the industry, trying to figure this out before I started applying, where I had to know everything that was going on with this industry, all the legislation that was happening, where it was. So when I went in this meeting with all these men that looked like the Colonel from KFC, and you're sitting in that room and you start talking about, the industry, they're like taken back because you know more than them. They're like, wow, I did not expect you to know this. I've had people say that to me, like, wow, you really know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about. So just being that aggressive, kicking that door down, checking all the boxes, being overqualified, basically.
And do you have plans for expansion?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So are you out?
We have 5 other licenses actually in Nevada with other partners that we're trying to open up, but we're also trying to expand outside of the state as well. So yes.
All right, well, hit me up. I'm in 7 states, and I'm in Canada, so I've got, hit me up.
There you go.
I'm so jealous. I have to say, I'm so jealous when I listen to how, I mean, it's challenging everywhere, but in Canada, the process is just so different. And the opportunity just to have a dispensary or sell anywhere, I envy. That's why I initiated my product line in the US, to be honest, just because it was able to be sold. We can't even do that here. So good for all of you.
I was going to ask you, Amie, what are you looking for right now in terms of wanting to expand or for your future?
Well, wholesale. I've got a sexual health product line in the US. So I've got an LLC.
What's it called?
Everything's Hip CBD. It's under Hip United.
Okay.
So there's my United side of Hip. And I also have a women-centric division that we focus on virtual events. So it's made by women for women. And hopefully I roll that into like a franchise brick and mortar. So
and where are you right now where can people purchase your products?
At hipliveshop.com.
There you go.
Oh, so it's e-commerce and you have fulfillment in the US.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
There you go. Hey, Jamie Pearson, you want your own show? Because you could absolutely do this. Okay? I know that you don't have anything to do in regular, your regular work day is, you got lots of free time, but you were an absolute joy to have on here. As a matter of fact, I think I say that every time you come on. I really have enjoyed your company and our evolving friendship. And I cherish that. So thank you for being here for the whole. You bet. And for everybody who has taken part in this open discussion, it really was great. And I I, as you know, have the utmost respect for females. And in fact, I'll tell you what, single mothers blow me away in so many ways. And the reason why, and I asked my significant other, because why, I said, how do you do it? How do you do it? Because moms and women, they have to do it. They feel like they have that obligation. And I have the utmost respect for that. Guys, we cause the trouble. You guys cure the trouble. And I appreciate that. I do.
Hey, Jimmy, will you do me a favor and make sure that every woman that was on today's podcast has each other's contact information?
That's Isabel Turner. She has the magic to do all that. And even those late arrivals, we're going to be able to do too, Jamie.
And anybody that is on this podcast that wants to talk to me, I am at your disposal.
There you go. Lead generation, another thing that we do here at Pro Cannabis Media. And we certainly appreciate, Jamie, your time and your smile and your intelligence and everything, how frank and open you were about your experiences. So I thank you. So for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, I want to say thank you. But I also want to remind you that our new show comes up right after this. And I'm very proud of our new show now because we have, I think it's 14 correspondents from different states taking out their time of their week and calling in a report about what's going on in their state. So this vision of mine of documenting the end of prohibition in the United States is really starting to come true. And I'm very proud of everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media. So I thank my Dan and my Isabel and everybody else who gives their time to the cause here. So for everybody at Pro Cannabis Media, I'm Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Coming up on We Talk News this week, a congressional vote for federal legalization reform could come in 1 week, as the MORE Act might be on the docket in the House within 7 days. Plus, there's a new #1 in the multi-state operator rankings as Cresco Labs acquires Columbia Care in a $2 billion stock acquisition. The U.S. State Department gets to visit with basketball star Brittany Griner, who is still being detained in Russia for possessing hash oil. Plus, Colorado licenses their first social clubs in Denver. State-by-state reports from coast to coast on We Talk News next. Pro Cannabis Media original content is supported by Salient Systems, your trusted name in video surveillance for the cannabis industry, and by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, CPA services for the cannabis industry, and by stylighting.shop. Log on today to get your grow kit.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto reporting for Pro Cannabis Media. It's springtime, which means things are beginning to turn green, potentially even for the United States as a whole. Marijuana Moment reports that a key congressional staffer has signaled that the MORE Act may be coming up for another House vote as early as next week. Though nothing is set in stone, the rumor mill is swirling as several advocacy groups say they've heard similar discussions. The legislation would federally deschedule cannabis, among several other reforms nationwide. It would be the second time the MORE Act makes it to the Senate floor and could be one of Democrats' final chance to pass cannabis reform before November's midterms. And on a worldly level, a new bill is asking the United Nations to deschedule cannabis, arguing the war on drugs has negatively affected human rights, health, security, and development on a global scale. The bipartisan federal bill would instruct the UN to deschedule cannabis from its Schedule I status and treat it as a commodity similar to other agricultural products. WNBA star Brittany Griner is still behind bars in Russia amid the ongoing war for allegedly having hash oil in her luggage. And it seems the US government may finally be changing their tone about getting her home to the States. This week, the State Department issued a statement saying, quote, "We insist the Russian government provide consular access to all US citizen detainees in Russia, including those in pre-trial detention, as Brittany Griner is. Some say the government's strategy of remaining low-key is to not increase her profile to the point where she might become a valuable political asset to Russia. But imagine being in a country where potential war crimes are allegedly being committed and you're locked up because of a bit of cannabis in your suitcase. The time for global change is now, and let's hope the government can work quickly to bring Brittany Griner home. Back in the US on Capitol Hill this week, the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse told senators in a health committee hearing that adolescent cannabis use has not increased in states that have legalized it, much to the surprise of at least one Republican senator. Vote Pro Podcast, Phil Adams has more in this week's DC Report.
Hi, this is Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast, here with the Weed Talk News DC Report. One of the few pro-cannabis Republicans in Congress died last week. Representative Don Young of Alaska, the longest-serving member of the U.S. Congress and co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, was on a flight from Los Angeles to Seattle last Friday when he lost consciousness and could not be revived. First elected to Congress in 1973, Young was one of only 5 GOP House members to vote for ending the federal prohibition on cannabis. Fellow Cannabis Caucus co-chair, Democrat Barbara Lee, called him, quote, a fierce advocate for ending the failed war on drugs. Young was 88 years old. For the second time in 2 years, a bill to federally legalize cannabis will get a floor vote in the House of Representatives. Among other provisions, this version of the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act would remove cannabis from Schedule I of the Controlled Substances Act, expunge prior cannabis convictions, and allow for resentencing of those currently serving time for cannabis offenses. An earlier version of the MORE Act was passed out of the House back in December of 2020, but subsequently stalled in the Senate, which was then controlled by the GOP. Formal introduction in the Senate of a separate legalization bill, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, is expected in April. In Maryland, the Senate Finance Committee considered a pair of bills to put cannabis legalization on the state's November ballot. At a hearing this week, lawmakers discussed HB 1 and HB 837, both of which passed the Maryland House of Delegates last month. HB 1 would put to Maryland voters the question of whether to approve an amendment to the state constitution to legalize cannabis for adults 21 and older. It would also direct lawmakers to provide for the use, distribution, regulation, and taxation of cannabis within the state, as well as the expungement of prior cannabis convictions. HB 837 would establish rules for creating a legal cannabis market should voters approve the amendment to legalize. Both proposals were sponsored by Delegate Lute Clippinger, who chairs the Cannabis Referendum and Legalization Work Group. That's the Weed Talk News for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
For weeks, Weed Talk News has reported on the increase of armed robberies on dispensaries, particularly in Washington State. And the problem does not seem to be getting any better. Well, the state's treasurer is now pointing fingers at federal leaders, blaming the robberies on Congress's failure to enact cannabis banking legislation. Tweeting this week, quote, "This was preventable. This shouldn't be a cash-only business. Congress needs to act now." Josh Kincaid takes a closer look in this week's Washington State Report.
I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Washington's governor wants to give hundreds of millions in cannabis tax revenue to people hindered by the war on drugs. The Community Reinvestment Account is part of a larger movement to promote social equity in the cannabis industry. According to the most recent data from the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board in 2020, well less than 20% of the cannabis retail owners identified themselves as minorities. That included 7% Asian, 4% multiracial, 3% Black, 2% Hispanic, and 1% other. Reinvesting Washington's communities will involve drawing funds from the state's dedicated marijuana account, which holds money from cannabis excise tax, penalties, license fees, and forfeitures. The $125 million for the reinvestment fund would focus on 4 key areas: preventing violence, implementing reentry services for those who were formerly incarcerated, giving legal aid to expunge records and vacate convictions, and then developing economic capital, like helping first-time homebuyers and small businesses obtain access to capital. Next week, you're going to find out about Washington State's stance on delivery services. The spoiler alert, it's not good. But with that, we're going to have to roll up this Washington State Cannabis Report. I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge reporting for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out.
And it seems some congressional leaders are willing to jump on the legalization bandwagon. This week, Nevada Senator Jackie Rosen tweeted about a meeting with the U.S. Cannabis Council, saying, quote, "It was great to see the council and discuss how Nevada's cannabis industry continues to create new businesses and jobs, bringing millions in revenue for our state. I'll continue to work at the federal level to allow this industry to reach its full potential." So let's take a closer look at what's happening in Senator Rosen's state. Here's Dani Baranowski with the Nevada Report.
Hi there, it's Dani B from City Trees here in Las Vegas, Nevada for the Nevada Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And boy, do I have some big news coming from the biggest dispensary in the world, Planet 13. So not only are they based here in Vegas, but they've recently expanded their footprint to other states. And this is the hot news. They disclosed their first location into Florida. It's going to be in Orange Park, which is in Jacksonville. Back in October, they signed a $55 million acquisition into Florida and are looking to develop 6 neighborhood-style shops in heavily tourist trafficked areas. Will they build something as big as they do in Vegas? Looking forward to seeing what they do in Florida. Not only are they in Florida, Nevada, but they're also in California and own 49% stake in an Illinois company. In other news, 2 gentlemen, boop boop, they got busted by the police here in Carson City, Nevada with 7 pounds of marijuana and are being held at a $20,000 bail. These gentlemen came from California. They did not have license plates attached. And just a reminder, it is still federally illegal to cross state lines with cannabis. And as a recommendation from me, please don't ruin it for the rest of us. We need to move this cannabis industry forward, and this is not the way to do it. These gentlemen, like I said, being held at $20,000 bail, and unfortunately, not only did they have the cannabis, the missing license plate, but also a small baggie of white powder. So do follow the rules and don't ruin it for the rest of us, like I said. And lastly, very hot news. If you haven't heard, cannabis consumption lounges are coming to Nevada. And this week, the Cannabis Compliance Board held one of their last public workshops. So public folks were encouraged to give their tips, recommendations. There were a lot of folks really, they had a lot of good ideas and some that had some interesting ideas, but the Cannabis Compliance Board took them all nonetheless. Just as a reminder, there's going to be 40 consumption lounges here in Las Vegas. 20 will be dispensary adjacent. So if you already have a cannabis dispensary, then you have the opportunity to have 1 cannabis consumption lounge. And then there will be 20 additional to independent folks. So with the independent folks, again, this is the first time that social equity has been defined into law. And so there's going to be 10 independent licenses and then 10 designated as social equity applicants. The CCB part of this public workshop was deciding how these license applications are going to work and what parameters people need to meet. So once these happen, then we encourage, everyone to come and apply. Nevada is going to be the Amsterdam of America. And we'd like to be the gold standard. So not only are we going to do it, everything, Vegas style, big and bad, but we want to make sure that we are defining social equity in an equitable way that is just and drives commerce forward. Looking forward to seeing what y'all do. This is Dani B from City Trees in Nevada for Weed Talk News. Signing off.
On the other end of the country in Maine, Representative Shelley Pingree is pushing a bill for the hemp industry. She's calling on the USDA to take a stronger stance on supporting American farmers, which she says will make the hemp industry more profitable and equitable. Sticking with what's happening in the Northeast, regulators in Vermont are beginning to draft guidance for packaging requirements for the industry. So let's check in with Jessie Lynn Dolan for this week's Vermont Report.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. It's a great weekend for me to be back from CanX in Israel. This coming Sunday, March 27th, is full of Vermont cannabis happenings. Vermontawanas' last Ski Days event will be at Magic Mountain in Londonderry. Also on Sunday, Hetty Vermont will be hosting a free seed and clone swap from 2 to 4 p.m. lot scene style at their office on Battery Street in Burlington. From there, you can head over to Hot and Hetty's Stony Supper Club in a sugar shack. Celebrate maple season with an infused meal and syrupy goodness. That's the Vermont Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
There might be a new #1 in the cannabis industry, at least in America. Cresco Labs has agreed to acquire Columbia Care Incorporated, now making Cresco the largest multi-state operator in the US. And the deal comes with a hefty price tag. Deborah Borchardt has the details in this week's Green Market Report.
This is the business update for Weed Talk News from the Green Market Report. We got more earnings this week, but the really big news was the acquisition of Columbia Care by Cresco Labs. This $2 billion deal will make it the largest cannabis company in the U.S. The combined companies would be larger than the current leader, Curaleaf, which had $1.2 billion in revenue. Cresco has 50 dispensaries, 21 cultivation facilities in 10 states, and Columbia Care has 99 dispensaries, 32 cultivation facilities in 18 states. The combined company will have about 6,100 employees. Now, both of them reported earnings this week. Cresco said that its revenue in the fourth quarter rose 34% to $218 million. And for the full year, they had revenue of $822 million. There is some concern about their debt growing. Columbia Care's revenue in the fourth quarter rose 70% to $139 million. Their full year revenue was $460 million. And Jushi Holdings also reported their total revenue rose 104% to $65 million in the fourth quarter. For the full year, they had revenue of $209 million. Unfortunately, Charlotte's Web didn't have a good quarter. Their revenue fell to $24 million from last year's $26 million in the same time period. Overall, for the full year, their revenue rose to $96 million, but they did report a net loss of $137 million. And those are your big headlines this week. I'm Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News.
And the expansion for Cresco doesn't stop there. The company has announced the grand opening of a new Florida location, bringing the company's total retail footprint to 50 locations across 7 states. 16 of those stores are in Florida alone. With that, Heather Allman has this week's Florida Report.
It's time for the Florida Report from Weed Talk News. I'm Heather Allman from Cannabis Law Report. The Sunshine State hosts around 130 million visitors yearly in addition to 20 million residents. Most are here for a short-term vacation, but in the last few weeks, Florida has seen a mass influx of cannabis companies who are planning on a lengthy staycation instead. Last week, Nevada-based Planet 13 announced their entry into the Florida market, with co-CEO Larry Scheffler stressing the importance of them entering prior to the state's transition to adult use. This week, Chicago-based Cresco Labs announced it is set to acquire Florida's Columbia Care in a deal worth roughly $2 billion. On Wednesday, the two MSOs agreed to combine in a blockbuster all-stock merger, which is the largest in the cannabis industry to date and will make Cresco the largest MSO in the country. Florida's licensed Columbia Care has an excellent geographic footprint but lacks scalability. However, their combined footprint with Cresco would include more than 130 cannabis retail locations across 17 states and the District of Columbia, reaching about 55% of the U.S. population in New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maryland, and of course, Florida. And last but surely not least, while Trulieve announced it was entering the Massachusetts market, a Massachusetts medical dispensary expanded into Tampa Bay, Florida, by completing work on 4 sanctuary medicinal dispensaries for a total of 6 in the state. Vantage Builders built the new dispensaries, and their spokesperson reports the company is working on 6 more openings in Florida expected later this year. Lots of commotion here in Florida. On March 23rd, Agrify Corporation, the leading innovator provider of cultivation and extraction solutions for the industry, announced they drove significant year-over-year growth in 2021 by launching their total turnkey solution for cannabis cultivators and implementing tech advancements to their vertical farming units, or VFUs. All these actions are cumulatively projected to generate an estimated $837 million in total revenue over the next 10 years. They also announced entrance into a TTK partnership with Gold Leaf Florida LLC, which will vastly expand Agrify's footprint in the lucrative Florida cannabis market. This partnership alone is expected to generate more than $380 million in estimated revenue over the full term of the 10-year agreement. In other news, we have a follow-up story to our February report on this week. The case against Florida cannabis doctor has gone up in smoke. Judge W. David Watkins issued a decision in favor of cannabis physician Dr. Joseph Dorn, whose medical cannabis clinic was targeted by the state's Department of Health in an undercover sting operation we reported on last month. Though the COVID-19 pandemic delayed the hearing in the case, the long-awaited March 16th decision by Watkins stated that the Department of Health failed to prove any of its claims against Dorn, writing in his decision that the evidence demonstrates that Dr. Dorn indeed performed a meaningful review and notation of medical histories and did in fact discuss the benefits and risks of medical marijuana with each of the undercover investigators as required by law. Bottom line, the Department of Health failed to present clear substantial evidence that Dr. Dorn acted or failed to act in any manner to defraud or trick any patient or the state. Dorn has been cleared of all charges. That's a wrap for the We Talk News Florida Report. I'm Heather Allman from Cannabis Law Report. Have a great week ahead.
In other MSO news, C3 Industries, based in Michigan, has opened its first Massachusetts dispensary in partnership with local social equity licensee Brian Chavez. With 3 dispensary locations in total planned, it makes the team one of the only social equity applicants in the country to obtain licenses for 3 storefronts in Boston. Ron Marshallsea has much more from Massachusetts this week.
I'm Ron Marshallsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. This past weekend was NECANN Boston at the Heinz Convention Center. I didn't manage to grab any interviews of my own, but that's probably because I was so wrapped up in enjoying my first cannabis convention, I wanted to take it all in, and I'm glad I did. Being able to meet one incredible person after the other that all work in this industry was amazing. And it makes you really realize that the cannabis industry is certainly here to stay and will continue to grow for the foreseeable future. If you can make it to any cannabis convention wherever you live, especially one like NECANN, I highly recommend it. On Monday, the Cambridge City Council unanimously passed a policy order repealing the 3% community impact fee tax on recreational marijuana. The policy order eliminated the tax, which is currently part of Massachusetts state law, in a move to, quote, support the viability of recreational dispensaries in Cambridge. The policy order also argues that evidence from Northampton suggests the repeal of the tax would not have any appreciable impacts on Cambridge finances, as Northampton repealed their community impact fee in January. And finally, Miss Grass, a U.S. cannabis brand, has partnered with Ascend Wellness to distribute its line of premium THC to Massachusetts as well as Illinois. The first Miss Grass products to be introduced to the Massachusetts market are Minis, 5.4 gram pre-rolls available in 3 color-coded strains. These different colors are based on specific terpene and cannabinoid profiles that elicit desired effects and emotions, fast times, quiet times, and all times. They will initially be distributed at Ascend retail locations beginning in Massachusetts as of March 22nd, with Illinois to follow sometime this year. That's this week's Massachusetts Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Ron Marshallsea.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
The outgoing director of Pennsylvania's Office of Medical Marijuana is raising red flags over the state's medical marijuana prices. He's calling on the state to look into prices for patients, saying the cost of wholesale has fallen sharply, but the price tag on medical shelves isn't keeping pace. Claudia Post has more on this week's Pennsylvania Report.
I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'm here in the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, reporting for Weed Talk News. Pennsylvania's Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs failed to clarify rules around addiction treatment and medical marijuana use, which is a serious, dangerous decision. Because they did not clarify, a young man named Tyler Cordiero, who was, operative word was, a drug addict, sought addiction treatment, but was denied because he was a Pennsylvania medical marijuana card holder. I mean, that's just beyond awful. It took 17 months, 17 months for the department to clear up the confusion. Meantime, people are dying. But oh well, you know, it's the government, move slowly. During that time, unfortunately, Tyler died of a fatal overdose. The department secretary was asked to explain the delay in not notifying county and state level providers that marijuana alone should not disqualify a person seeking aid. And when asked, this is so past the buck, when asked why, she said the department wasn't given permission to distribute that information and encouraged county drug and alcohol offices to reach out to federal government. Is that an answer? That's called pass the buck. Kick the can, whatever you want to call it. That's disgusting. Poor Tyler. Recently, hearings were completed for recreational legalization, finally. But at the conclusion of the hearings, Senator Judy Ward called the hearings one-sided. Why? She said that some of the really important stakeholders were left out of the discussion. So what I learned in business a long time ago, if I want to change something in my business, I go to the people who are doing it. I don't make a decision in isolation. So here we have some of the stakeholders who were not included: drug and alcohol professionals, chiefs of police, the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, and Smart Approaches to Marijuana. It's another disgusting decision. A few weeks ago, I reported that the PA Department of Health recalled and banned 670 types of cannabis vape products. Regulators declined to explain the action beyond saying that the medicines contained added ingredients that have not been approved by the FDA. What are those ingredients? Who knows? Because nobody's telling us. P.S. These products have been on the market since 2018. So why did the state allow these products to be sold in the first place? This level of recall only really happens when you have imminent risk. You know, sort of like COVID and imminent risk. It's just another absurd decision. The executive director of the House Health Committee stated there was some contamination in a product at one of the sites in regards to vaping of medical marijuana, but did not give information as to which facility nor what the contaminant was. Oh well, shooting in the dark here, and we are just left with no information. Take a deep breath, Claudia, and I'm going to say that's a wrap from Pennsylvania. I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'll be back next week to talk about what's hot and what's not in Pennsylvania. From Weed Talk News, have a fabulous week.
A farmer's market stand raising eyebrows in Missouri. Budman turned heads when it put out signs at St. Louis's famous Soulard Farmers Market saying things like 10 pounds for $5,000. But it wasn't THC flower, and despite not breaking any laws, the company is being asked not to return to the market until further notice. Brandon Jones takes a closer look in this week's Missouri Report.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones from Distribution Maven with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yeah, it's crazy. I saw the story on Fox 4 News. So basically at Soland Market here in St. Louis, the owner of a CBD company basically had it all approved, had all the paperwork correctly to be able to sell his CBD flower there in bulk like that. The big problem was that he started now selling Delta 8. Uh-oh. And he posted it right above it. So there's a big sign saying homegrown Delta 8. And of course, with social media, he was shut down pretty quickly and is now not allowed to come back to the farmer's market. The CBD that he had in big bins, he had it all approved. He had the testing, the paperwork. The owner of the actual market was okay with him selling that. But once he started doing the Delta 8, that's kind of when the things kind of changed a little bit. So they're under investigation to see if they can get it put back in as they take the Delta 8 off. But at this time, we don't know. So My second story is actually about the rally that's happening on the 29th here in Jefferson City, Missouri. There's a big group of cannabis enthusiasts here going to the state capitol just to bring awareness, education, and see if the legal 22 Missouri Cannabis Act can actually get passed. That's big for all the people that are in jail, because expungement is a big part of that bill. And then bringing recreation to 22 in Missouri would be a big, big thing. So if you don't have anything to do on the 29th, head down to Jefferson City, Missouri, raise awareness and support for the cannabis industry. Thanks a lot for everybody. Again, I'm Brandon Jones from Distribution Maven with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News.
California's Department of Cannabis Control has a new Deputy Director of Public Affairs appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom. And amid the state's nasty tax battle in the industry, one senator is pushing legislation to establish a tax credit for cannabis retailers in the Golden State. Christopher Smith has all the details in this week's California Report.
Greetings from the left coast. This is the California Roundup for Weed Talk News. There's nothing in the world as good as California bud, and a new bill would offer a legal way to share our bounty with border states. Theoretically, SB 1326 seeks to approve interstate commercial transactions for cannabis products. The thinking is that states with lower supply would welcome a little extra to feed their demand. Problem is, California just doesn't have a little extra. Our oversupply is the stuff of legend. And that's all before the feds weigh in about the issue of interstate commerce of a Schedule I drug. Stay tuned. A bill introduced in California aims to create tax credits for states' cannabis retailers as lawmakers seek to help the industry compete with the unregulated market. Under the legislation proposed by Democratic State Senator Scott Wiener, legal cannabis businesses would receive a tax credit equal to employment compensation, safety-related equipment, and employee workforce development and safety training. The measure has union support. In an effort to recoup lost revenues, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration auctioned off a commercial property on March 23rd that was seized in connection with illicit cannabis retail operations. The property in Whittier was part of an investigation into illegal cannabis sales, which uncovered more than $850,000 in unpaid taxes. The property ended up selling for $330,000, and on March 2nd, about a month ago, the department sold another property in Compton for $256,000 in conjunction with the LA Sheriff's Department. And a cannabis software startup called Jointly Better Inc. has found a clever way to attract software engineers and compete with Amazon, Google, and Facebook for talent. A life management and stress management toolkit that includes monthly reimbursements for cannabis purchases as part of the compensation package. Jointly is looking to hire 25 people by the end of the year. And I'm Christopher Smith, publisher of the American Cannabis Report, bringing you California stories for Weed Talk News.
Some cannabis businesses in Denver have been given the green light for a hospitality license. That means some of those businesses now have the option to create membership lounges or other spaces for public consumption of cannabis. And there's a similar scene happening in Michigan, as the state's first licensed consumption lounge is set to open its doors just in time for 420. So with that, let's check in with Michigan NORML Executive Director, Rick Thompson.
Hello again. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Well, it's a big payday for cities in Michigan who allow adult use cannabis retailers. The 10% excise tax we collect on recreational sales of cannabis is divided between roads, schools, and the communities who allow cannabis sales. That local money is held for communities who had open and operating cannabis retailers, and every retail storefront which collected tax in 2021 will yield $56,000 to their host cities. Now, almost all cities have more than one storefront open, so some cities will receive more than $250,000 from the program, and some could receive more than $1 million. This cut of the tax money spent by consumers will save some cities from having to shut schools or lose police officers. It could pay for new construction, for more playgrounds, or other city expenses. Now, while that's great news for the rest of the state, it's a terrible blow to the city of Detroit, which has refused to allow adult use cannabis retailers to open while they figure a way to advantage locals over outsiders in the licensing process. If all of Detroit's 75 medical marijuana retail licensees had an adult use license, they'd be $4,200,000 richer right now. Hey, look, it's that 420 number coming back up again. Hash Bash Weekend is a little over 1 week away, and all the latest announcements from the field are positive. Monroe Street Fair has expanded. The Hash Bash Cup seems to be back and better than ever. There's a new treasure map project to help people explore Ann Arbor's cannabis venues and its history. And the sitting Attorney General is going to speak at the Bash on April 2nd. Yes, Dana Nessa will once again take to the stage at the Bash and deliver words of inspiration and guidance to the thousands of heavy cannabis users gathered there. Now, her first appearance at the Bash was in 2018 when she was a candidate for the job, and the MI legalized ballot proposal was still as yet unapproved. She took the stage then with our current governor, Gretchen Whitmer, and Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. The Hash Bash Organizing Committee welcomes her back to the Bash, and we hope everyone listening attends all the events being hosted by the cannabis community next weekend in Ann Arbor. Detroit. The Motor City still has no adult use cannabis businesses, as you heard earlier, and a proposed ordinance to allow these facilities will be even further delayed due to action by the City Council. A vote on this ordinance was to be held Tuesday of this week, but after a 1-hour closed session and a 2-hour public meeting, Council decided to bump their vote for another week in order to give more information to the people about the potential changes this ordinance could bring to the city. The new meeting date is April 5. During Tuesday's meeting, Council member and former Senator Coleman A. Young Jr. proposed multiple amendments to the program, including allowing stacked licenses, doubling the annual budget for social equity from $500,000 to $1 million, expanding the number of cannabis retailers and micro businesses allowed in the city, expanding social equity definitions to include any former felons or anyone who was a caregiver prior to 2017. Now, each one of his proposals was rejected by Council, and most were by an 8-1 vote. Several black owners of cannabis businesses in Detroit spoke against any further delays in passing the ordinance, as every day they're prevented from having adult use sales in the city, their businesses are subject to closure, said one participant. The new ordinance gives 2 tracks for license approval, one for social equity applicants and another for the rest of the people, according to Council Chairman Pro Tem James Tate, who still feels his new ordinance is lawsuit proof. And most of the speakers at Tuesday's council session complained they felt the ordinance did not give enough advantage to native Detroiters. The United Food and Commercial Workers Union has announced that Manistee, Michigan's own cannabis store, Authentic 231, has unionized their workforce. The effort to unionize was supported by the company's owners, which are Left Coast Holdings. The vote includes a labor peace agreement clause, which prevents workers from authorizing walkouts over contractual disputes. Left Coast has cultivation facilities in Michigan and will expand its retail presence and offer union opportunities for all of their ventures. The Food and Commercial Workers Union has already enrolled union members in the cannabis industry in both Illinois and California. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
And it's the final week of March, and Weed Map's marketing team doesn't seem to be missing any shots. The site is hosting a March Madness style bracket competition, pitting 32 strains against each other to find which bud customers like best. The campaign even got a shout out from Kevin Durant. So perhaps a sign that mainstream media and entertainment will have to face the fact that it's a whole new world of weed out there. And remember, use it wisely. That's it for Weed Talk News this week. I'm Elena Pinto reporting for Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, my name's Tai Chang. I'm the president and founder of Aloha Green Apothecary in Hawaii. We're a vertically integrated medical cannabis company with 3 dispensaries, 1 extraction lab, and 1 cultivation center near the North Shore of Oahu. We have over 150 employees now, and we've been working with Adaptive HR to meet our human resource needs. We're super excited to work with them as we expand, and we've grown at least 2-3 times over the last 2 years. So we look forward to a good relationship with Adaptive, and come visit us in Hawaii anytime. Aloha.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay 1 initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information. Meet Caduceus Science, the alternative wellness company. You know CBD, but how about CBG, CBN? That's right, Caduceus Science produces a range of full-spectrum products, all lab-tested in small batches to maintain the highest quality of products. CaduceusScience.com. Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.